Okay folks, welcome back to Wooden Tool Man's channel. I'm Wayne, and I'm the guy that puts the wood in the tools, I guess. So this video, what I'm going to do is just show you a little bit more of my floating router lathe copier. Now this is a machine that, I'll tell you, like, it's not pretty, as you can see. It's full of pocket holes, but just try to remember that this thing is something that I cobbled up in just a day. I came into work and decided I was going to try it a different way. My original version, if you've seen it, the bit came in and plunged down in. I had a floating mechanism that actually made the router come in above it. But the problem with that is I was only cutting with the very tip of my bit. And you know, if you think about it, if you're just cutting with the very tip, it's not going to do that. You know, it only gives you a little bit of the router bit to utilize. So after trying it, you know, I realized that it wasn't the ideal way, and I thought that I could do better. So I ripped it apart and cobbled this thing up, and I'll tell you, if you've seen the videos, you know what this thing's capable of. You know, taking chunks of firewood that are big and uneven and just munching them down into baseball bats and whatever else. Now, in them videos, you know, except for the one there where I turned the legs, I was just getting used to this thing, and have since have turned some real nice turnings with them. I didn't get it on video, but I actually used some of the turnings in a kitchen. You know, this was one that, you know, was an island, needed a couple big posts on the end, so this was actually the template for that. And if you haven't seen this thing before, I highly recommend you look at the other videos of this machine, but I'll just show you what happens is, so you can see the router bits coming out. Well, directly in line with that is this little bearing here, and this bearing will actually follow along any template that you put in here. And that way there, when you get your stick, it'll actually reproduce that on the lathe. So it makes it so the router bit is coming out like this, so then you're using this flat part, which, you know, if you think about it, here's the cutter is actually cutting up like that, so it's gonna cut better. There's just no question, and this machine proved it to me. There would be no way that I would go back to another machine that was pointing and coming into it like that. It just didn't work as good. It chipped it out. It was slow, and you know, it just didn't work good. This thing, on the other hand, is a monster, and it's pretty simple too. You know, it wasn't fancy by any stretch of imagination. There's no precision involved in this, other than, you know, you got to get this little beam here the same width as your little channel here to fit it into. Other than that, you know, you got to make some sort of router mount on the top. Now this was just fast and dirty and ugly, but it worked, so it didn't really matter. I could, if I had a round router, make a nice, you know, and there's lots of videos showing people mounting their routers with, you know, you'll do a nice carve out, drill a couple of holes on either side and squeeze that router bit, that router together. But this was just, like I said, it was just fast and dirty, and it worked, so it didn't really matter. What's important is down here. So what I'm going to do now is grab the camera, and I'll show you just how I made this floating mechanism, because you can see this thing makes the router so it's very easy to move the whole length of the lathe, and there's very little weight on it. I've actually got to push down on it. What I got to do? It bounces is what it does. And, you know, just makes it super easy to use. You can see in the other videos, I actually do, you know, carving a big block or a big crooked block, just using one hand, you know, and it's just, it's very, very easy to use and easy to hold on to. It's easy to control. So now what I'll do is grab the camera, and then I'm going to show you down inside of this thing. As long as something don't go wrong, I tried another couple of takes on this, and the first one ran out of storage on my phone, and as long as my light don't go out, I see it's flickering, but hopefully it'll stay together, because I don't really have time to do all that fancy editing stuff. And besides that, this keeps it real life, and there's no camera trick. So, like I said, this isn't pretty. Does it work? Yes. Could it be done better? You bet. But I'm not, you know, that part is the least, or that's the part that you guys can play with yourself, because you're going to have a different router on it. This is the part that I'm going to show you is down below. So all I did is I had started out with two longer pieces, and I don't think they're much more than about 8 inches wide or something like that. They might be 8 or 9 inches wide. And all I did is I left them a little bit longer on the bottom, you can see, and then I just pocket holed this piece in between, so I made like a beam with two pieces that ran longer. Well, that made it so that I could, and I guess this piece is made a little bit shorter here, so you can see that I doubled up on the material. up at the top, and that was so that it left room for these other two pieces to go back through. And there's a pivot here and a pivot here. So that makes it so that this thing will bounce up and down because these springs are hooked to it. So when that bounces down, that makes that so it can pivot back and forth, and that gives you your rocking action. So that makes it so you can cover it. So if you're down a little bit and rock it back and forth, it'll give you a different spot. And if you're all the way up and rock it back and forth, it gives you a different spot again. So it's very, very simple mechanism. And you can see you don't got to be fancy, and you can see that this old melamine swelled up to, well, it's pushing an inch thick now because it was through a flood. Like I said, this whole bottom of this machine right up to you can see the line right there. It's about a foot deep in water. Did it hurt it? I don't really think so. Everything's still nice and tight, and I can tell that the action's still nice and smooth and consistent. So I wouldn't hesitate to try to use this machine just as it is. So pretty easy. If you guys wanted to, I could take and get the measuring tape out and do some measurements on some of this stuff, but pretty straightforward. These screen door springs are just indispensable, as you can see. So that's, by pushing down, that gives the action, and then that'll make it so that this thing can rock, because it's nothing to teeter this back and forth, and that up and down motion gives you the different travel. So I did get fancy and made a dust hood on this thing, because it was pretty dirty. I was playing with this thing quite a little bit for a long while there, and this really cut it down. And I made a dust. It has a hole in the back so I could hook my dust collector up, and it made it pretty good. One thing I will say, if you try to do something like this, be super careful, because I did, as you can see, I did get a bit into my end stock, or into my end bearing here, and it just made the old carbide fly. So I started being extra careful, and if I had the right template on this, I could actually make sure that bit, there was no way it could actually get into it. So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. If you watch the video, the way that I found I got the best job was actually to go backwards on this thing while I was taking out the big stuff, and then that last pass just to go nice and slow forward, and then you see the router bit would be cutting this way, and just do the beautiful job. Now that one, no, I guess that's just a piece of dirt. Looking through the camera, it looked like it was a chunk of carbide missing out of it, but it's not. So there we go, folks. You can also see this is the same hood that I used when I was doing the finger joints with this thing. So this thing made it so I could actually do finger joints too, because if I put my finger jointing template, which I have right here on this thing, get in the view here. So if I had my finger joint, you can see I could just drop it in one of these every time, and this was on the opposite end, and it was just, I could actually do finger joint. And then there's a video to show this thing doing finger joints as well, and I was amazed how good a job it done on them as well. So you guys keep tuning in. This is just if you guys want, I can, like I said, spend a little bit more time and do some measuring on this, and have them marked out like I did similar to the pocket hole machine. But the problem with that is everybody's lathe is going to be a different size, and it's just a matter of, I could give you some approximate measurements, I guess. So hopefully you guys like this video. Thanks for watching, and keep tuning in.